The silence of deep space was broken by the low hum of the Nexari hunting vessel as it drifted through the Crimson Nebula's outer edge. Inside the ship's war room, Cathara stood before a holographic display showing their target, a small human vessel, apparently disabled and drifting helplessly among the cosmic dust clouds. Cathara's obsidian scales gleamed under the red lighting as she studied the readings with all four of her arms crossed behind her back. Her species had hunted across 17 star systems, claiming trophies from the most dangerous creatures the galaxy had to offer. But humans? Humans were supposed to be special. They were the galaxy's newest apex predators, the ones who had somehow clawed their way up from a backwater planet to challenge empires that had ruled for millennia. "The ship appears to be running on minimal power," reported Voss, her lieutenant. His scarred face bore the marks of countless hunts, and his voice carried the confidence of someone who had never failed to bring down prey. "Life support is functioning, but weapons and engines are offline. The human is trapped." Zinta, the youngest of their hunting party, shifted eagerly near the tactical display. Her scales were brighter than the others, still unmarked by battle scars. This would be her first human hunt, and she could barely contain her excitement. "How many aboard?" Cathara asked, her voice a low rumble that commanded respect. "Sensors indicate a single life form," Voss replied. "Male, mid-30s by human standards. No distress signals, no attempts to repair the ship. He's just sitting there." Cathara's head tilted slightly. In her experience, prey always ran, always fought, always tried something. The fact that this human was doing nothing at all was unusual. But then again, perhaps he had simply accepted his fate. Some species did that when faced with inevitable death. "Perhaps he's injured," Zinta suggested, her voice betraying her inexperience. "Or maybe his ship's communications are down and he doesn't know we're here." "He knows," Cathara said with certainty. "Human ships have passive sensors that would have detected us hours ago. No, he knows we're here. The question is why he's not running." The hunting party moved to the observation deck where they could see their target with their own eyes. The human vessel was sleek but unremarkable, barely larger than a shuttle. It bore no military markings, no signs of heavy weaponry. If anything, it looked like an explorer's ship, designed for long-range travel and research rather than combat. "Scans show minimal defensive capabilities," Voss reported, consulting his datapad. "Some basic shielding, but nothing that could stop our weapons. This should be over quickly." But Cathara wasn't so sure. She had studied human psychology extensively, as all good hunters did. Humans were known for their unpredictability, their ability to turn disadvantage into victory through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. They were also known for their deception. "Open a communication channel," she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the human ship. What they saw defied all expectations. Instead of a terrified or desperate human, they were looking at a man calmly sitting in what appeared to be a small kitchen area, holding a steaming cup of something hot. He had sandy brown hair, weathered features that spoke of time spent in harsh environments, and eyes that seemed far too calm for someone facing certain death. "Well, hello there," the human said, raising his cup in a casual greeting. "I was wondering when you'd finally make contact. Name's Jackson Reed. Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." The three Nexari exchanged glances. This was not how hunts typically began. "Human," Cathara said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being feared. "I am Cathara of the Nexari Hunting Guild. You have been selected as prey for the Great Hunt. By the ancient laws of the galaxy, you have 1 standard hour to prepare yourself before we begin pursuit." Jackson took a sip of his coffee and nodded, thoughtfully. "The Great Hunt, right? I've heard about that. Very prestigious. I'm honored, actually. Not many humans get selected for something so exclusive." He paused, looking directly at Cathara through the screen. "Though I have to ask, are you sure you want to go through with this?" Zinta bristled at the human's casual tone. "He dares to question us? We are the apex hunters of 17 systems." But Cathara held up one of her hands for silence. There was something in the human's tone, something that didn't match his situation. Confidence was one thing, but this bordered on amusement. "You seem remarkably calm for someone facing death," Cathara observed. Jackson chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to echo through the communication channel in a way that made all three Nexari feel slightly unsettled. "Death? Oh, I don't think we're there yet. See, the thing about humans is that we're really good at learning, and I've been learning about your species for quite some time now." He stood up from his chair and walked closer to the camera, his casual demeanor unchanged. "For instance, I know that Nexari hunters pride themselves on fair play. You announce yourselves, give your prey time to prepare, and then begin the hunt. It's all very civilized, very sporting." "Your point?" Voss growled, clearly irritated by the human's attitude. "My point is that you've already made your first mistake," Jackson said, his smile never wavering. "You assume I'm the prey?" Before any of the Nexari could respond, alarms began blaring throughout their ship. Voss rushed to the nearest console, his forearms working frantically across the controls. "Impossible," he muttered. "Our engines are being hacked. Someone's taking control of our navigation systems." "How?" Zinta demanded, panic creeping into her voice. "His ship has no power, no weapons." Jackson's voice came through the speakers, still calm, still amused. "Oh, my ship has exactly as much power as I want it to have. See, the thing about being a deep space explorer is that you learn to be very, very good at hiding what you don't want found. And what I didn't want you to find was the fact that my ship is anything but disabled." On the screen, they could see him moving through his ship, no longer the helpless, stranded human they had expected. His movements were purposeful, controlled, the movements of someone who was exactly where he wanted to be. "Let me guess," he continued, his voice following them as he moved. "You did a standard scan, saw minimal power signatures, assumed I was helpless. But here's the thing about humans. We're really good at making assumptions work in our favor." Cathara felt something she hadn't experienced in decades of hunting. Uncertainty. "What do you want?" "Want?" Jackson appeared back on screen, now in what was clearly a command center far more sophisticated than their initial scans had suggested. "I want to show you something. Something about humans that your species might find educational." The lights in the Nexari ship dimmed as their power systems began to fluctuate. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the hunting party's faces as they realized their predator-prey relationship had somehow been reversed. "You see, Cathara, and yes, I know your name. I know all your names. The thing about humans is that we don't just fight to survive. We study, we learn, we adapt." Jackson's image leaned forward, and for the first time the Nexari could see something dangerous in his eyes. "And for the past 3 years I've been studying you." "3 years?" Zinta whispered. "Oh yes. Ever since your guild killed my research partner on Kepler Station, Dr. Miranda Vasquez. Perhaps you remember her? Young xenobiologist, unarmed, studying. Coral formations on the station's outer ring when your great hunt decided she would make an interesting target. The atmosphere in the Nexari ship grew cold. Cathara remembered that hunt. It had been Voss who had taken the human scientist, claimed her as a trophy. A clean kill, they had called it. Efficient. She was prey, Voss said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. The hunt chose her. The hunt chose her, Jackson repeated, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. And now the hunt has chosen you. Funny how these things work out. The ship shuddered as more systems came under external control. Life support remained stable, but weapons, engines, and communications were all compromised. They were trapped, just as they had assumed their prey would be. "Impossible," Cathara said, more to herself than to Jackson. "No single human could infiltrate our systems like this. Our security protocols are military grade." "You're right," Jackson admitted. "No single human could do this, but see, that's another thing about humans. We're pack hunters. We work together. And I've had 3 years to prepare for this moment. 3 years to gather allies, to study your technology, to learn your weaknesses." On the screen behind him, other figures began to appear. Humans, but not just any humans. Their clothing, their bearing, their equipment, these were military personnel. Special forces by the look of them. "Meet my team," Jackson said conversationally. "Former Earth Special Operations just like me. Turns out when you hunt one human's friend, you tend to make enemies of all their friends. And humans, we have a lot of friends." Zinta looked to Cathara desperately. "What do we do? How do we fight?" "This?" But Cathara was beginning to understand the true scope of what they had walked into. This wasn't a hunt that had gone wrong. This was a hunt that had been designed to go wrong from the very beginning. The disabled ship, the lone human, the perfect setup, it had all been bait. "You've been planning this," she said slowly. "All of it. The ship, the distress situation, even your location in the nebula where our sensors would be partially compromised." Jackson nodded approvingly. "Very good. Yes, all of it. Every detail calculated to bring you here, to this moment. You see, Cathara, you made one critical error in your understanding of humanity, which is, you thought we were just another prey species that got lucky. You never considered that maybe, just maybe, we're the galaxy's apex predators for a reason." His smile returned, but now it held no warmth at all. "And now you're about to learn what happens when predators try to hunt the hunters." The communication channel went dead, leaving the three Nexari alone in their ship as the lights flickered and systems continued to fail around them. Outside, the crimson nebula swirled with colors that suddenly seemed far more ominous than beautiful. The hunt had begun. But this time, they were the prey. The emergency lighting aboard the Nexari hunting vessel cast long shadows as Cathara paced the command deck. 6 hours had passed since their systems had been compromised, and the silence from the human ship was more unnerving than any threat could have been. Voss stood at the useless weapons console, his scarred hands clenched into fists, while Zinta huddled near the backup power station, her bright scales now dulled with fear. "He's playing with us," Voss growled, his voice echoing in the dim chamber. "If he wanted us dead, we'd be dead already. This is psychological warfare." Cathara nodded grimly. She had studied human military tactics extensively, and this felt like something from their most classified operations manuals. The waiting, the uncertainty, the gradual realization that everything they thought they knew was wrong. It was textbook human psychological manipulation. "Status report," she demanded. Zinta consulted her readings with shaking hands. "Life support holding steady at 60%. Engines still offline. Weapon systems completely locked out. Communication arrays. Wait." She paused, her expression shifting from fear to confusion. "We're receiving an incoming transmission. From the human? No, Huntmaster. This is coming from everywhere. Multiple sources throughout the nebula." Before Cathara could respond, the main screen flickered to life. But instead of Jackson Reed's face, they were looking at a conference room filled with humans. Men and women, in military uniforms, their faces bearing the hard lines of combat veterans. At the head of the table sat an older human female with silver hair and cold blue eyes. "Greetings, Nexari hunters," the woman said, her voice carrying an authority that made even Cathara straighten unconsciously. "I am Admiral Catherine Cross, Earth Special Operations Command. I believe you've been speaking with one of my former operatives." The screen split, showing both the conference room and Jackson Reed aboard his ship. He no longer looked like the casual explorer they had first encountered. His clothing had changed to tactical gear, and his entire demeanor radiated the controlled lethality of a professional soldier. "Hello again," Jackson said with that same unsettling smile. "Miss me?" "What is this?" Cathara demanded. "What do you want?" Admiral Cross leaned forward. "What we want, Huntmaster Cathara, is to discuss the future of human-Nexari relations. Your great hunt has been targeting human civilians for the past 5 years. Scientists, explorers, colonists, people who pose no threat to anyone. The hunt is ancient law," Voss interrupted, "recognized by the Galactic Council. We have every right to select prey as we see fit." "Ancient law," Jackson repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. "Let me tell you about ancient law. On Earth, We had something called trial by combat. Very ancient, very traditional. The idea was that the guilty party would be defeated by divine justice. He paused, his eyes never leaving the screen. Of course, we eventually realized that might doesn't make right. Apparently, your species hasn't learned that lesson yet. The screen shifted again, showing tactical displays that made Zinta gasp in horror. Surrounding their position in the nebula were dozens of ships, sleek, deadly human vessels that had somehow remained completely hidden from their sensors. You see, Admiral Cross continued, while you were studying humans as prey, we were studying you as predators. Your tactics, your technology, your psychology. 3 years of intelligence gathering all leading to this moment. Cathera felt her world tilting. You used him as bait, your own operative. Jackson volunteered, the Admiral replied. After what happened to Dr. Vasquez, he requested permission to set up this operation. We gave him everything he needed, the ship, the team, the resources to make it happen. Jackson's image moved to the center of the screen. Miranda wasn't just my research partner, Cathera. She was my wife. And Voss killed her for sport while she was studying coral formations that could have led to new medical treatments for a dozen species. His voice remained calm, but the fury in his eyes was unmistakable. So yes, I volunteered. I wanted to look into the eyes of the creatures who thought humans were just another trophy to be claimed. You're talking about revenge, Cathera said slowly. This entire elaborate setup was for revenge. Partly, Jackson admitted, but mostly, it was about education. You see, your species believes that might makes right, that being the apex predator gives you the right to hunt whoever you choose. We wanted to show you what happens when you try to hunt something higher up the food chain. The lights in the Nexari ship suddenly restored to full power. Life support systems hummed back to normal operation. But when Voss tried to access weapons or engines, the controls remained locked. We're not going to kill you, Admiral Cross said, and the relief on Zinta's face was visible. That would make us no better than you. Instead, we're going to give you a choice. A new display appeared on the screen, showing what looked like a contract written in both human and Nexari script. Option 1, Jackson said, standing up and walking closer to his camera. You signed this agreement. The Nexari Hunting Guild formally recognizes humanity as a protected species. No more human hunts, no more targeting our civilians. In exchange, we share some of our technological advances with your people and establish formal diplomatic relations. And option 2? Cathera asked, though she suspected she already knew. Option 2 is that we release the recordings of this conversation to every news network, every government and every species in the galaxy, Admiral Cross said matter-of-factly. They get to see exactly how the mighty Nexari hunters were outmaneuvered by a single human with a fake distress signal. They get to see how your supposedly superior technology was completely compromised by human ingenuity. Voss snarled in rage. You would destroy our reputation, our honor. Your honor? Jackson's voice cracked like a whip. You talk about honor while hunting unarmed scientists, while targeting civilians who never did anything but try to make the galaxy a better place? He shook his head. No, Voss, you lost your honor the moment you decided that power gave you the right to terrorize the innocent. Zinta stepped forward, her young voice trembling. But we are hunters. It is what we are. Without the hunt, what are we? Jackson's expression softened slightly as he looked at the youngest Nexari. You're whatever you choose to be. On Earth, we used to have warriors whose only purpose was conquest and domination, but we learned to channel that drive into protection instead of predation. Your species has incredible skills, incredible potential. You could be guardians instead of hunters, protectors instead of predators. The galaxy needs defenders, Admiral Cross added. There are real threats out there, species that actually pose dangers to peaceful civilizations. Your hunting skills could be used to protect the innocent instead of terrorizing them. Cathera stood silent for a long moment, processing everything she had learned. Her entire worldview, her species' entire culture, was being challenged in ways she had never imagined possible. The humans hadn't just outfought them, They had outthought them at every level. "How long do we have to decide?" she asked finally. "You have until you leave this nebula," Jackson replied. "The moment you cross the outer boundary, we'll know your answer based on what you transmit to your guildmasters. Sign the agreement and transmit it to the Galactic Council, or spend the rest of your lives known as the hunters who were hunted by their own prey." "And if we choose neither option?" Voss asked belligerently. Jackson's smile returned, but now it held no warmth at all. "Then you don't leave the nebula. Ever." The screen went dark, leaving the three Nexari alone with their thoughts and their impossible choice. The silence stretched on for several minutes before Zinta spoke up. "Huntmaster, what do we do?" Cathara looked at her young subordinate, then at Voss, then at the contract still displayed on their secondary screen. Everything she had believed about her species' superiority had been systematically dismantled by a single human with a cleverly disguised ship and a desire for justice. "We learn," she said finally. "We learn that being the predator doesn't make you the apex species. Being smart does. Being adaptable does. Being willing to work together for something greater than yourself does." She moved to the communications console, "And we learn that humans aren't prey at all. They're what we could become if we choose to be better than what we are." Her hands moved across the controls, accessing the contract and beginning the formal signing process. Behind her, Voss made a sound of disgust, but he didn't try to stop her. Even he could see that they had been outmaneuvered so completely that resistance was pointless. "Transmitting acceptance to the Galactic Council," Cathara announced. "And to Earth Command." The response came within moments. Jackson's face appeared on screen one final time, but now his expression held something that might have been respect. "Welcome to the civilized galaxy, Cathara," he said simply. "Your ship's systems are being restored now, safe travels." As their engines came back online and their ship prepared to leave the nebula, Zinta looked back at the human vessel one last time. "Huntmaster, do you think they're right? Can we really change what we are?" Cathara considered the question as they moved toward the nebula's edge. "I don't know, young one, but I think we're about to find out." She paused, watching the stars wheel past their viewport. "Besides, I'm curious to see what it's like to be the protectors instead of the predators. And if there's one thing I've learned today, it's that curiosity might just be the most dangerous weapon of all." Behind them, the crimson nebula swirled, with colors that no longer seemed ominous but somehow hopeful, and in the depths of space, a single human ship continued its journey, its crew having proven once again that the apex predators of the galaxy weren't necessarily the ones with the biggest claws or the sharpest teeth. Sometimes they were the ones with the biggest brains and the strongest hearts. The hunt was over. The real journey was just beginning.